Well, let's bring in David Bossie, former deputy campaign manager for Donald Trump for president. He's also the president of Citizens United and a Fox News contributor. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Okay, it's hot down in Washington, D.C.
Yes,
we were expecting the CBO score to come out today, maybe a vote later on in the week, but things in the Senate are on hold right now as John McCain recovers from brain surgery. They did a craniotomy, or I think that's what it's called, where they removed a 2-inch clot. Now we've got to figure out how good and how well he's doing so that he can come back. Excuse me. What's the status of this particular health care bill right now in the Senate? Well, does the president have the votes?
Well, first of all, my thoughts and prayers are with Senator McCain this morning. It is a serious thing that he's going through, and I hope that he does well in his recovery. You know, he's one of the last of a generation, right? A true war hero.
Maverick.
You know, I've not agreed with him on a lot of things in the Senate over the years, but he's a true American hero for a lot of people, so I wish him well. This Senate bill is going to make it through. It is going to be very difficult over the next week while we wait for John McCain, because when senators are sitting around watching television and watching the coverage, they get a little hinky, as they say here. And I think that I'd prefer a vote today or tomorrow as opposed to later this week or the beginning of next. But it is going to get done.
Well, the problem is you have Senator Susan Collins says, I want you to deal with Democrats, and Rand Paul says this isn't exactly what I want. So these Republicans are not on board. There's about 8, David, that are not on board yet or not off board. What role can the president have? Effective in the House, he's been somewhat much more muted on the Senate side.
Well, I think what he's done is let the process work the way that it's supposed to work. And I think the president's letting Mitch McConnell and his staff and Mitch McConnell's leadership team put this together. And I think it is on the House and Senate. Let's make sure we're all clear. Donald Trump has been on the political landscape for a year. He's been a year and a half, and he's been president for 6 months. But we, Republicans, conservatives, ran to repeal and replace Obamacare for 7 years. He came to Washington, President Trump did, with the belief that Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell had a plan.
They were going to do it in January.
They were going to do it in January or February, and there was a plan because for 7 years, every candidate has been running on repealing and replace. So I just say, let's slow down in the blame game. There's plenty to go around. Look, did the White House communicate this correctly? I think the communications and the legislative team have been up against it on health care, where some people wanted to see taxes first. Look, there's a lot of things that could be done and talked about. This is going to happen, and once it happens, nobody's going to be pointing fingers, and it's going to go back to the House, and they're going to vote it up or down in July.
David, I want to get your reaction to this, because Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, one of the largest banks in the world, he sits on the White House Business Advisory Council, and he was on a phone conversation on Friday with other big bank executives.
Conference call.
Conference call, exactly. And he is frustrated. And is it safe to say, is he a Democrat? Do you know, David?
I think he is a Democrat, but I'm not exactly sure. But
I don't know if he supports the president now, but I don't think he did in the beginning. But this is what he said on the conference call. He says, it's almost embarrassing being an American citizen.
We have it.
Do we have it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's listen.
This administration can make breakthroughs in taxes and infrastructure, regulatory reform. You know, we have become one of the most bureaucratic, confusing, litigious societies on the planet. It's almost an embarrassment being an American citizen traveling around the world and listening to the stupid we have to deal with in this country. And, you know, at one point, we all have to get our act together, or we won't do what we're supposed to do for the average Americans. It's not for corporations. Competitive taxes are important for business and business growth, which is important for jobs and wage growth. And you know, honestly, we should be ringing that alarm bell.
We expect to hear that from the Midwest or from the center of the country. Now we're hearing that from the New Yorkers.
Wow, I'll tell you, that's somebody who's been listening to President Trump. You know, I'll tell you, President Trump is President Trump today because of that exact sentiment, because of those facts. He won Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and other states because of that exact message that the American worker was being left behind, and it was time that people came to Washington and put aside quite honestly, the BS that this town has for the last 40 years put forward. And it is time to stand up for the American worker, which is why the president's leading this week's, Hire American, Buy American week. And I'm very happy to see this.
Yeah, I just hope that, this new president with the new approach, everyone first they tried to turn the Electoral College delegates over, then they tried to have a recount, then they had the Russia thing. So when it comes to the Russia thing, all of a sudden it gets traction because of Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting that no one knew about. Then we find out there are more people in there than we thought. And I saw Lanny Davis wrote something in the USA Today as a message to Ty Cobb, the president's new attorney, and John Dowd. He said, do what we did with Bill Clinton. As painful as it is, led by the president, he told us everything. They put it out there. They even called reporters with the gory, ugly facts. And the minute they got it out there, it began to turn. And the minute the lawyers took the lead, things began to switch. And by the time Bill Clinton was done, the budget was balanced, and he left with a 60% approval rating. That was much more salacious than anything with Russia. Do you think that Lanny Davis's approach would work for President Trump, and would he listen?
Well, let me just say, I was the chief investigator in the 90s. I went up against Lanny Davis and his team every single day. Mike McCurry and their team, incredibly talented people. I disagreed with them on a lot of things, but they were incredibly talented, and they did President Clinton, a solid job. And so I do agree with Lanny, and Lanny Davis is a smart guy. He doesn't have to agree with Donald Trump to understand the strategy and tactics that go behind this. And so I'm happy to see, incredibly happy to see the president bring John Dowd and now Ty Cobb onto his team so that they can get a handle on what is going on behind the scenes, so that they can just get it all out. This drip, drip, drip thing is just not working, and we need to have a group of people, a core group, that come up and understand what everything is, right, and put it all out there, for better or worse, so that it's over in the dog days of summer, and then the American people understand the politics behind this, that it is the permanent obstruction campaign by the Democrats. That's all they have to grab onto. Sure. They have no policy initiatives.
So beat them to the punch. Beat them to the punch. Put it out there. Stop making these reporters famous and these anchors, Hollywood stars, and just tell them, put it all out there, and then go do the job.
Because there's nothing there. So even with this Donald Trump Jr. meeting, it's still nothing to it. It is in the sense that in June, when this meeting happened, no one was talking about Russia. I wish he hadn't had the meeting, but no one thought at that moment in time, and the Secret Service was not. He did not have protection of the Secret Service at the time. So nobody was vetting these meetings. And so I look at it as an innocent mistake and a naive mistake by folks who just didn't understand the politics of what 18 months later would look like, to be quite honest. And more importantly, nothing came from the meeting. The meeting happened. It ended. Nothing happened from that meeting that we can see at this point. So I think it's important that John Dowd, Ty Cobb get their arms around this with Kasowitz and his team and put it all out there. End it.
All right. Good enough. David Bossie, we thank you very much for joining us from our nation's capital today.